Going into the word that is translated proverb into English, the word mashal from Hebrew, could you just briefly touch on the meaning of that word by itself, just the word, the Hebrew word proverb?
Yes. So a mashal is then, it's something that is, I guess you'd say, it's the picture that is placed in the mind that is going to be the rule over how the mind thinks and sees everything else. And so that's what a proverb is. A proverb, you get a picture of something. When it says, just like what we're looking at here, a man that hath friends must show himself friendly, or there's a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. We take the truths of that and they form a picture of what it would be like if I'm a man of friends, and what would I be like? If there's a friend that sticks closer than a brother, what would that be like? And so I get that picture in my mind of this kind of person, and then that word mashal, this picture, then rules in my mind, so that I'm looking to conform to it as God's design, and I'm also observing to see when there are other situations that do not conform to it. So, but I'm looking for that picture, a mashal. It becomes a rule in my life, and that's where that rule idea comes in. But it really also, it gives me a picture in my life of what my life should be resembling, and what all of life should be resembling.
Very good. Before we go into Proverbs 18:24, so why is that so important to the Lord, our practical everyday life?
Well, it goes back again to that idea that we're his representatives here. We're created in his image to be like him to everything else around us. And that means every other being as well who is created in that same image. And so we need to represent him accurately to everything. And so when we look at these things, this is giving me a picture. When I just look, so let's just say any verse, and I'm seeing, if this is what God would have me to be, then what would God be like if this is the way he'd have me to be? So instead of just taking this and just saying, okay, this is a rule to apply to life, I'm looking behind the rule and I'm saying, what's the God like who would have this rule to be in my life? So if he would have me to be a man of friends, if he would have me to be a loving one, how does he want me to be a loving one? How does he want me to be a man of friends? And that tells me about his nature and his heart. Just like the Jeremiah 9:23 and 24, the boasting. And you look at the structure there, and it says basically, the wise man's not to boast in his wisdom, or the rich man his riches, or the athlete in his athletic abilities, and something like that. But the mighty man in his mind, But he says, and he's literally said there, because the condition exists, and that's what he uses, two conjunctions there, a causal conjunction and a conditional conjunction. So it's because the condition exists that in this a man is to boast himself, and so that is the foundation for why he's not to do any of these three up here. But the very next thing is, in this a man is to boast himself, in that he knows and understands me. He's knowing and understand me, and because I, the Lord, am the one doing, wisdom, justice, and judgment, something like that.
Chesed is
in there, yeah. Uh-huh. And justice and judgment in the earth. And then you think about, okay, so why does he do those things in the earth? And the next one is key, because you got key, three foundational things. And it says, because in these I delight. Well, delight is that which is an expression of the inner character. So his inner character is just to do chesed and mishpat and tzedakah. Isn't that terrible? I couldn't remember the English, but I can remember Hebrew. But anyway, and so okay, chesed, mishpat, chesed, judgment, and justice, righteousness. So but he delights in those things. That's what he is. That's who he is in his person, and therefore, we are to boast ourselves only in knowing and understanding him. That is, knowing him as he's revealed himself, and understanding how he would have us to live in relationship to him. And therefore, what other realm is there for boasting? There is none. So when I look at that, every time I look at a scripture, when he says, okay, if you need to be a man of friends, and I learn what that really means, that tells me that's coming from the heart of God. This is not something external to him. This is his expression of himself, the way his nature is, and thus, if I'm going to represent him, I need to express the same. And so that's what I'm looking for. If I'm supposed to be loving, where does that design for loving originate? It originates in the person of the Creator who built us, and therefore he is loving, and I'm going to represent him. I need to be loving. And there's so many things like that you see.
And so love is it this emotion that we have? And so you can touch on the relationship between love and those practical statements of Proverbs, the likenesses.
Oh my. Well, of course, love, we think of it as emotion, but love is not emotion. And there's so many places where this can be manifested. But love is that idea where the individual who loves someone or something, that individual, and we like to say, well, it's sacrificial. And I say, no, it is not sacrificial. Love is the giving of oneself, and always within the design of God, the giving of oneself to help another person become all that God would have him or her to become. So I give of myself to help those people become what God would have them to be. And you see, so when I say that, so I can have an emotional response to someone. I have an emotional response to my wife, but my emotional response may be very selfish, and I could say I love her, but the main person I love is me. Mm-hmm. But when I love her as God designed love to be, then I look for God's design. Okay, God, how did you design me to relate to this woman? How did you design me to talk to her? How did you design me to express honor and respect and cherishing to her, And then when I see that, it's not just that he told me to do this. It's not like he's external to his instruction, to his design criteria. Mm-hmm. They are expressions of his person. So it means he is that one who's that way. And then when I take that and I apply it to, say, John 3:16, and that's why I've said this through the years, God could not withhold his son. And people say, wow, yes, no, he can't. That's his person. That's who he is. He loved. And in that, for God so loved this ordered cosmos, if you will, that he gave his son. Well, you have to stop and think. That means he gave of himself perfectly within his design to bring about the absolute best for us. And that best would be that we would be reconciled to him and be able to walk in his way and know the blessedness of the life he designed. So when I think of love, I'm always thinking of criteria. So when I look at a proverb and I'm thinking of criteria, these are his criteria of how we should live, what life should look like. But those criteria are expressions of the heart of the one who gave them. And so love and Proverbs are not two separate things. They're so totally enmeshed with one another, totally integral to one another. They can't be separated. So they just fit together very well. And they fit together very well because they were designed by God to do exactly that.
So with the Proverbs, building on what you're saying, many will say things like, I'm just not this. I'm not patient. I have a temper, or those kind of things. What are we saying when we say those kind of things?
I don't believe God. That's basically what we're saying. I reject the design of God, and I'm not going to seek it. So, but now that's it in a nutshell. But at the same time, we are saying, in a sense, let's say it's a believer and says, well, I'm just this is the way I am, and I just get mad easily or something like that. Well, why do you get mad easily? And what makes us mad? What makes you mad? Well, the person gets mad because he's not getting his way. Wait a minute. That sounds a little like selfishness there. And we look at the Proverbs and we see we're not supposed to be selfish. That'd be a good one of this one. There's a friend that sticks closer than a brother, So we're not supposed to be selfish. We're supposed to be giving of ourselves. I mean, if God gave of himself for us to be reconciled to himself, and he gave his son for that, and he did. And that's an expression of his heart. And if we are to be representatives, should that not also be an expression of our heart? That we would give of ourselves to help someone else become what God designed him or her to be. And so as we do that, then we're looking, when we see that we need to do that, then we begin looking, God, how do I do it? And let's say it's that woman that you gave me, like Adam said, it's her fault. She is so exasperating. Why? Why is she exasperating? So I began to ask myself, what is the reason why she's exasperating? Well, is it because she is really an ungodly woman? Or is it because her husband acts in ungodly ways that cause her to react and respond improperly? So then I began to look at the scriptures and I say, okay, I need to change this to help her with that. That idea of looking at someone else's life, looking into the design of God and saying, you know what, is my upset, is my exasperation, is my doing this, is this the design of God? And when I look and I see that it's not the design, then if I truly believe God, then I say, I need to change this. And when I change it, I begin to experience the result, the blessedness that comes. And that will move me to more and more blessedness and so forth.